I'm assuming you were probably on the call with the Democratic members from Congress the other day. There have been reports that it got quite contentious. Do you see this now turning into a internal fight within the party in terms of whose voices need to be more dominant, whether it's the AOC Bernie Sanders wing of the party or the more moderate wing of the party, the more conservative wing of the party? What kind of a reckoning do you think takes place, and how do you think Nancy Pelosi will manage it?
The way she's been managing it from the center.
Losing.
And the people that were elected that kept their seats are centrists. There's no question in my mind about that. You cannot accuse 3 or 4 people of turning over these seats. At the end of the day, it was far more complex than that. And some of it is our ability to message correctly and to validate, but a lot of it is going to be policy from my point of view. And we've got to demonstrate that at the end of 4 years or the end of 2 years, that we've been tougher and we've delivered on these issues that people care about. And, this anti-communism, anti-socialism is deep in our community. But my argument is that Donald Trump hasn't delivered on any of that. He just said it and scared people, and that Joe Biden has an opportunity he can start by.
I love getting advice from losers. That's the best kind of advice, is when the losers come in and they tell you what you're doing wrong. You ever had a friend like that like their life is not going so well, and maybe they aren't getting good grades in school, their job's not, they never got a good job, they never got a nice car, and they're always going to tell you what you're doing wrong. That's what I feel like right now. We're looking at Shalala, and we've seen, for those who don't know, Donna Shalala is the former Democratic representative for my home district, Florida 27. And I've been very critical of her on the podcast substantially, and talked about how she probably should have never been in that position in the first place. She only got into the position not because she was popular, but because of a lack of ranked choice voting. 67% of the people voted against her, and she was just able to squeak out just because there were so many candidates. And when you look at her, what she's talking about is substantially, is factually, it's quantifiably false. You can see that the people that did win were not centrist. You saw that people that backed Medicare for all in candidates in the House of Representatives, they won overwhelmingly. And the ones that lost were the ones who tried to be more centrist. So, and you also see one thing that has held true for another election, and it was something we've talked about also in past episodes, is that America is progressive. Across the nation this cycle, we saw ballot measures that passed around legalizing drugs, legalizing marijuana for individual use. In Florida, bright red Florida, we saw a $15 minimum wage pass. Not only that, it's not just a $15 minimum wage, it's a $15 minimum wage tied to inflation. So once it reaches the $15, it's going to continue to rise with inflation without needing an additional vote. It's the perfect minimum wage increase that we've always talked about as progressives. So by seeing these ballot measures pass across the country, and then you see people don't like centrists. People don't like people that just try to be, they try to play both sides. They want people that are going to be for policies that help the working class and people that really need it, that make the majority of the country.
Yeah, totally. And I want to show this clip from Waleed Shahid. He's with the Justice Democrats, where he shows vote share up for House Democrats actually declined in swing districts as candidates adopted more conservative views. So I'm going to show, basically there was a big conference call that blew up on in the mainstream media from one of the congressmen. I believe her name was Abigail. I forgot her last name, but she was basically complaining about, socialism and the fact that, all the progressives were the ones that totally did not do a good job in keeping their seats. But AOC talked about this same thing, same situation. She talked about how she offered her help to try to help many of these swing state people but they didn't reach out for her help. And a lot of the other progressive Democrats like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, they use their grassroots support to help pretty much deliver. For example, Michigan was delivered to Joe Biden, while you had John Kasich, who
Minnesota.
everyone made a big deal out of it. Ohio still went to Trump. So if you look at the data, at every metric, it was the progressives that helped out the moderates and by Joe Biden win.
That there were 27 toss-up districts. This is a tweet from Emma Vigeland, formerly of TYT, and that the Republicans won 25 out of the 27 toss-up districts. So if you don't see that centrism doesn't work, that's a perfect example.
Gotcha. I think I know what you're talking about. I'm gonna bring up that tweet, but until I bring that up, I just want to show this one more shout out to Gabe's old representative. So this is from David Sirota. First of all, that video blew up. It got over 100,000 views. It really blew up. And David Sirota said, as HHS secretary, she blocked Americans from purchasing lower price meds from Canada. Then as Congresswoman, laughed at Florida voters who want lower price medicine, then got thrown out of Congress, and now goes on TV to berate progressives. Like, it's in Florida, you have a big old people community where they need their medicines, and you're supposed to be representing them. And she's the one not allowing them to have cheaper drugs.
Yeah, but we also know that Florida is famous for voting against their own interests.
It's very clear that no one wants a blasé, like watered down soda candidate. People want, for the youth vote, like for the youth people watching, people want that McDonald's Sprite, crisp and fresh and cold. No one wants warm soda that you put ice in and it's now half water. Like, people want what they want, and they don't want to compromise. They don't want to moderate themselves, which very, very clearly explains why a lot of very boring candidates lost their election.
Yeah, Georgia does a lot of things wrong, but at least one thing that it wouldn't have happened as it did for Gabe is that over here, if you don't get 50% plus one, you go into a runoff. So at least that's better, not for the presidential election, but for other lower races. That's why we're going to have 2 Senate runoffs coming up January 5th.
All right. So basically, this tweet talks about those who supported Medicare for all, who won election, and then how blue or red their district was. And as you can see, everyone who who were for Medicare for all, Katie Porter, she won. And that's the swing district. It was a +3. And Matt Cartwright, he won. Then you had Max Rose, he did not win. Mike Levin, Pete DeFazio, pretty much everyone who supported Medicare for all won their re-election. So obviously, if anyone was to look at the data, they would know, okay, we need to start supporting more progressive policy and boastfully promote it, because Biden, he was for $15 a minimum wage because of Bernie Sanders pushing him in that direction, but he didn't promote it. And apparently the Florida Democrats thought that it would be a hindrance, or it would be, a hindrance to his election in Florida. And as we can see, that won 60% or over 60%, getting $15 an hour, and Joe Biden lost Florida. Here's another case in Maine, 2nd Congressional District, right? So Joe Biden and Sarah Gideon, they were against the defund police they were against Medicare for all. They did not accept AOC's help, and they did not win in Maine, right? Then you had Jared Golden, who was for Medicare for all, did accept AOC's help, and he actually won. So I really hope that, and I'm glad that AOC, Jamal Bowman, I saw Ilhan Omar, they were all in the mainstream media, and they were able to fight back this rhetoric. And that's one of the good things about having popular progressives, is that you have people that not only are popular that these mainstream medias will reach out to, but they also can articulate the right things to say, and without being too combative. I think you have to walk a tightrope when it comes to politics, and I think they did a great job when I saw them.
One of the things that I read about, the whole socialism stuff in Florida, especially with the Cubans, was that first of all, Trump really outspent Biden there. So he kind of ignored a large part of the Latino population there. And second, the Republican Party has been around doing groundwork for a long time there, while the Democrats haven't as much. And that's one reason why it's not necessarily that he sticks, but they're the ones that they listen to. They're saying that whenever the immigrants are coming in, they need the citizenship papers filled out and things like that. Is the Republican Party that's helping them. So they have that relationship, and not to mention, the older people generation that still have that connection. So it's not all about the whatever AOC is saying in New York. It's what's happening on the ground locally, and who are the people that are talking to the voters there.
I wanna combat what you're saying a little bit, and I want to point out that a lot of the distaste that Cubans have for Democrats dates all the way back to the Bay of Pigs, way back when a lot of Cubans lost their lives expecting support from the United States, from which the Democrats were in power, and were completely abandoned. And ever since then, that has left a really bad taste in their mouth, leading all the way to today to people who have full life experience of how bad life can be under socialism. So the fact that one side is very, very against and just nonstop attacking socialism as a brand, as an ideology, whereas the other side is okay, somewhat flirting with the idea, that enough is a turnoff for people who have spent any portion of their lives in Cuba and had to flee.
There's nobody flirting with the idea. Come on, it's all about the messaging. They call, like, they're saying in the comments over here. My man Cole was saying they're going to call him socialist anyway. Biden, we know Biden is the farthest thing away from socialist, yet they tarred him with the same label. So it's not that they are or flirting or anything. It's that Republicans are going to say what they're going to say, and the Democrats are weak at messaging and not good enough at marketing, but because they really got nothing to stand for, nothing to run for. So or nothing to run on. So that's what difference is. It's not that they are flirting with socialism or anything. It's that they're just weak
See,
at
I,
the
I,
narrative. They don't know how to control
I,
how they are defined by others.
I disagree with that because the whole thing about the big tent idea that the Democrats have, the whole big tent thing is that, oh, look, we have a bunch of people with a bunch of ideologies. If the Democrats were a restaurant, they'd be the cheesecake with the menu that goes from fajitas to salads to Thai wraps to pasta. And the inside looks like a golden mosque. Democrats try to fit a watered down version of all these ideologies to the point that, yes, there are people under the name Democrat that flirt with the idea of socialism or they flirt with socialist policies. But I think the real issue is calling them socialist policies and calling themselves socialists. If Bernie Sanders didn't label himself a socialist back in 2016 when the progressive wing of the Democrats got a huge boost, I think they could have gotten a lot more done, or even just that, they could have gotten a lot more presence.
It's not because
less hate.
of Bernie Sanders. It's because everybody, even on their own tent, are attacking them. So if the Democrats would just stick to a message, even if you don't want to call it, but if they were they're not even for Medicare for all, even if you don't call it that, even if you don't say the name socialism, they're not for it. We just saw how Donna Shalala, whatever, she voted against importing drugs from Canada to help out the people in the United States. So it's not about that they got this big bad brand that everybody hates. Is that the people that do hate it are the people that got something to gain from not providing healthcare to people that are tied to the health insurance industries, and that goes on both parties. So you have the corporatists in the Republican Party, which is all of them. You got the corporates in the Democratic Party, which is a whole bunch of them, and then you got the corporate media, and they're all ganging up on them. So that's why.
Yeah, and they would, and everybody that understand politics know that Biden been around for 47 years, and all of a sudden, so if you know Biden record is not even close to anything related to socialism. At the end of the day, is that people are going to believe whatever the Republicans, like Carlito said, it's all about messaging. They're going to believe whatever messaging the Republicans going to say. You have people talking about that Biden's going to raise their taxes 64%. It's over 400,000 and all these crazy numbers. Is whatever the Republicans are putting out there, and it works. Their message works. So if you look at Biden history, Biden is a Republican with a D next to his name.
Yeah, I went back in time and I looked back at 2008 and when that election was going on, and the article that I read said that a week before the election between Romney, I believe it was Romney and Obama, they ran ads in Florida for just a week, right? And about him being a socialist specifically. And I was trying to find that ad. That ad was on YouTube, but they made it private, or they took it down or whatever. Because I was curious how serious it was, how much they attacked him with it. But what I was curious to find was that they only did it for a week, where Trump did it he was in Florida before Biden was in Florida. So that's where it comes to, I agree with Carlito when it comes to messaging. When it comes to politics, when I'm learning from the Progressive War Room and talking to different people and learning about the strategy, you want to define your opponent before your opponent is defined. And that's one thing that Trump did in Florida. And you guys remember that Biden had a strategy, or his campaign had a strategy that they said was not going through the Latino, community. Like they were basically saying they don't think they need the Latino vote for their strategy to win. And
he specifically said that,
exactly,
which was completely inaccurate.
To win Florida, at least it was totally inaccurate. So I'm going to button up this
they needed
conversation. Go ahead.
They needed it in Arizona, but it wasn't the Biden campaign doing the work over there. It was a different organizations.
Yeah.
One particularly that, or a few that were working with Bernie's former head for the Latino outreach, something Rocha, last name.
Chuck Rocha. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was doing that. So after, even with everything they were saying about Bernie, they went all in trying to help out Biden win just because they didn't want Trump in. So it's just everything that's going on right now is just a slap in the face, which, I expected. So we're back to normal.
Yeah. And by the way, just to let you know, Chuck Rocha, I know a lot of people identify him as the Latino outreach, but he was actually running the campaign. Like, I heard him say that when he had an interview with Katie Halper. A lot of people just assume he was specifically for Latino outreach. He was like, that's something that a lot of people, that Bernie didn't get a lot of credit for. He put a lot of minorities, a lot of women at the head of the departments of his campaign. And we're going to wrap this up with this last clip from our guy, Jamal Bowman.
Jamal Bowman is a congressman-elect from New York City. He defeated the incumbent, Elliot Engel, in a July primary and is now the projected winner from the general election on Tuesday. Congressman-elect, congratulations. First, let's start there.
Thank you. Thank you so much, John. Great to be with you.
You're going to come to this city where I work, Washington, and you're going to instantly be put in the middle of a family, right? It's like a big Thanksgiving dinner, and everybody gets together, and you're a family, and occasionally, as the turkey gets heads, people get fights. I want you to listen here. One of your new colleagues will be Abigail Spanberger. She's a moderate and a centrist from a district that President Trump had carried before. She won re-election, but a couple of her centrist friends lost, and she's not happy, and she blames progressives. Listen.
Not only did we not win the Senate, but we lost House seats that we shouldn't have lost, in my opinion. Great members who were focused on the issues that matter to people and had voted on issues that matter to people. And what I expressed to my colleagues is this is a place where we need to do an after-action report about how we thought what would happen was so different from, in fact, what did happen.
She says one of the problems is Democrats who push for defunding police. One of the problems is Democrats who identify as democratic socialists. Do you agree?
I disagree. You have to run your race in your district in response to the needs of the people in your district.
Yes.
And if you're responding to their needs, and if you're building relationships and making connections and doing everything you have to do, then you should be able to win your race. This is about deep, authentic relationships. This is about transformational politics. And I disagree that someone running on a different platform hundreds of miles away is going to impact what happens in a particular race. So
perfect. I love what he said. That's what I'm talking about. That's the type of rhetoric that we need, that I want to see propagated in mainstream media. Go ahead.
I think a lot of Democrats. Go for it. I'll go after.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, they didn't, it goes back to what Messer was saying earlier, which I misspoke about Nancy. It's like they don't look at themselves and say, like, we didn't pass a stimulus bill. There's people out there waiting, Instead of like saying, let's work with Trump, they were like, we're not going to give Trump a win, so we're not going to do a stimulus bill. And now people have been, 7-8 months waiting for help. So maybe those people in those districts were like, you're not doing anything for us, so we're just going to put someone else in.
What happens if they don't win the Senate in January? Are they going to even ever get another stimulus bill out? It's very unlikely.
I think so.
You're not gonna.
I think they will, because real quick, Felipe, and then I'm gonna let you go. I think they will because the business community is asking for it. And remember, with the CARES Act, the business community, Wall Street, they definitely wanted that first stimulus, and that's why that was the time to get a UBI, a Medicare for all during the stimulus during COVID. And the Democrats did not get that done. But I think at this point, everyone knows, including Wall Street, that they need a new stimulus. And now is the time. This would be the time to push some sort of progressive, either UBI, I don't know if we will get it done, but or some kind of even a public option at the very least. This stimulus coming up would be the time to do it.
But Mitch McConnell already said that they don't need another stimulus. So if Mitch McConnell has the Senate, well, he's just not going to push through it. He's going to have majority. So he already won re-election.
He said that recently,
and he already had a chance, but all he did was trying to push through and qualify Supreme Court justice and then go on vacation right after. He could have stayed and done something then, but no, he just went on recess right after ramming somebody that doesn't even know what the First Amendment entails.
Felipe, last person.
Oh, okay. So I had a lot to say going back to Spansberger. She, for just a regular representative, she acts like she's some big shot. I don't think she realizes that she speaks for just the people in her district. I think a lot of Democrats don't. They like to think of themselves as, oh, I'm big, strong, I'm a Democrat. But they speak for the people in their district. And I think they get in way above their head. They get lost in the sauce. And they don't realize that they're not doing it for their people. But moving on from that, I think Mitch McConnell will more than likely agree to pass some sort of stimulus bill just because he will do it.
Not unless if he gets what he wants. He already talking about not having progressive candidates on the cabinet. So he's going to be like, I agree to this stimulus bill, but this is the people I want in your cabinet. This is the people you're going to nominate. If not,
you know what Joe Biden can do? He can have an acting cabinet, pull a full-on Donald Trump, and just have people acting chief of staff, acting Treasury Secretary, and just not have them confirmed.
I'll give him a lot of credit if he does that.
Because Joe Biden is so strong, and the Democrats,
Joe Biden came in speaking about working with Republicans. That was his number one thing. Bipartisanship, and we all know when it comes with these kind of centrists, bipartisanship means getting together to screw the people.